By the title of the video, you can already guess what I'm going to talk about. You might be wondering, Payday 3 has nothing going for it at the moment outside of a new DLC and armless headless chains as an early Halloween event. Payday 2 also doesn't have much going for it, since it kinda just died shortly before the launch of Payday 3. Even though you could argue it's been dead for longer, but that's a topic for another video. If you do want to hear about the untimely deaths of the multiple lives of Payday 2, then let me know by leaving a like, a sub, and a comment down below. It'd be much appreciated. Then, well, what about Raid? That's like a difficult topic. One I'm not sure I'd feel qualified to talk about much at the moment. But maybe that's another thing for the future. Wink wink and nudge nudge. So then, why did I decide to scrap my other project and make another video? Well, to be honest with you, I found a fix for Payday the Heist Windows 11 freezes. If you struggle with that issue, open Task Manager, set the core affinity for Payday the Heist EXE to be 6 cores, 6 threads only, and set it to eco mode for good measure. Yeah, really. Oh, and also, HW12dev added mod overrides and DB create entry support.
You're welcome.
Which basically kickstarted a second modding revolution for this game. That's pretty cool. Thanks, HW.
You're welcome. Labo.
Anyway, after much headache, I was finally able to play this game again. I've basically sat on the sidelines since about January of this year, and it's been frustrating. God, it's just been a repeat of the situation I've had when Payday 3 first dropped. How it just didn't compare to the experiences that this game delivers. Shortly after Payday 3 released, I released a video talking about the history of Overkill turned Starbreeze, my gripes with Payday 2, and how much more I enjoyed Payday the Heist. I personally think it's an okay video, but I feel like I also failed to talk about a couple of things that I should have probably added in a figurative part 2. So, here we are. Payday the Heist, a timeless masterpiece, unmatched and unrivaled, even by most of its peers. I think it's honestly quite sad that Payday 2 turned into such a mess, and that Payday 3 never quite managed to get past its initial hurdles without stumbling and dropping their spaghetti. Or maybe it was the spaghetti that made them stumble in the first place. In the time between then and now, Starbreeze actually managed to get the rights to Payday the Heist as a whole. Previously, it was still technically a solely online entertainment turned Daybreak game company game, but now it's officially a Starbreeze sanctioned title, with none of the splashes updated, so it still screams Sony. I also never really talked about the negatives of the game, or really tried giving an explanation on what sets the heists apart in comparison to the heists that would follow in later games. I think that I should probably mention the obvious again. Payday as a franchise is incredibly influential and also equally as important, especially to its fans, which I sadly find myself to be a part of. I say sadly as I can't really say that I particularly enjoy the second or third game in this franchise. Same thing can be said for most of my friends that I end up making through just being involved in the community, really. It pains me to admit that I simply can't let go, even if I try to. I have too much involvement and too many hours invested. I want to see the game that I once loved flourish and excite a new generation of people. But in the same breath, I also wish that the game that I have such involvement in was a little closer to the game that I hold so dearly in my heart. Payday 2 is a shell of its former self, and Payday 3 is trying to emulate a lot of the things that were present during the later lifespan of the second game. Tripled and sometimes quadrupled amounts of comps to what it started out with, power creep weapons and skills, balance changes that push the game more and more into becoming ultimately mindless and thoughtless. The kicker here is probably more that Payday 2 and Payday 3 are or were live service games, whereas Payday the Heist was closer to a one-and-done product when it initially released. Sure, it got some post-launch support in the form of patches, hotfixes, and one major DLC later down the line, but it lasted about 2 years before its life ended. All of the things I think personally dragged Payday 2 further down and down kind of come together as a culmination of adding new content, reworks, nerfs and buffs, or it's just general incompetence. Less is sometimes more, you know. You could probably also make a point that developers of years gone by knew that if they didn't release a fun product back then, they wouldn't be making any money. But then again, Daikatana exists, and Dead Space 3 does too, so I'll forget about it. But let's take a step back from the issues that come with live service games. Let's look at how Payday the Heist is more of a shooter than Payday 2 is. Sounds confusing, but hear me out here. You see, Payday the Heist is leveling much like its two bigger brothers, but it handles things quite differently. To maximize time spent with the game, you had to grind through 145, or 193 with the DLC, levels of unlocks. These unlocks contain straight up buffs, weapon upgrades, permanently increasing their accuracy or damage output, as well as buffs for you as well as your team, and lastly, additional guns for you to use. It's what you've come to know if you've ever played a 7th gen video game. Leveling, upgrades, unlocks, basic customizability. You start out incredibly weak, with a team buff called Noob Loop, to entice higher level players to carry you through a difficult mission for a slightly increased payout, which in turn translates to more XP gained. It sounds funny, but actually meant that a lot of people found themselves in a tough spot. The early game is deliberately made more difficult for you. Artificially, you find yourself at a disadvantage in comparison to your fellow players. You could argue that this means you're enticed to stick closer to them, which in turn would mean reinforced cooperation, but it also means that you will fail more at no fault of your own. You aren't meant to beat heists on the highest difficulty from the start. With only 9 heists in the game, 6 at launch, I think it's starting to make a little bit of sense why they would try and do something like that. Encourage people to see finishing the heist as a challenge, put them at a disadvantage when they start out, making them get stronger as they learn the game's mechanics. The leveling woes exist to stretch overall time played. The game absolutely suffered from a lack of content even back then. But you find yourself gaining new guns, with your arsenal getting stronger as you level up, coming to grips with the spawns and level layouts, basically growing alongside your character. It's very simple and a natural focus on player growth alongside a very basic increase in character stats by leveling, more commonly found in RPGs rather than shooters. The main idea was that the challenge of beating all the heists on the highest difficulty would be your ultimate end goal, next to reaching max level obviously. They even ended up adding an additional difficulty for the die-hard fans just so they could get an additional bit of juice out of the game they adored so much, Overkill 145+. But lady, this is a shooter, not an RPG. The two follow-up games leaned heavier into the RPG elements, the second one specifically adding a handful of new difficulties just to please the part of the player base that genuinely could not get enough of what the game had to offer. Generally, everyone in the community can agree on the fact that the highest difficulty in Payday 2, Death Sentence, ended up being untested garbage, and the ultimate example of why you shouldn't always listen to the most vocal part of your community for things like this. You add more tools, people will use those tools to the absolute best of their capabilities. If something sticks out as exceptionally broken, they'll abuse it. If it's exceptionally broken from the start, people will complain the game is way too easy without looking at how the other tools stack up in comparison. Skill trees, perk decks, guns with gimmicks such as high explosive rounds or triple shot. It's kinda starting to make sense why Payday 2 has a problem with its difficulty. Payday the Heist knew when to stop. Less is simply more. To be fair, money was also running out, so maybe there's a universe where Payday the Heist got Death Sentence instead of Payday 2. God, that sounds horrible. Anyway, by having less extras such as skill trees and perk decks, the base experience here remained the main focus. Some people might not even really notice much of a difference once they get to the max level, with all the upgrades, guns, perk decks, and crew bonuses unlocked. It is quite obvious, but people are just used to much worse nowadays. The upgrades and perks are very subtle in comparison to some of the things that would come in later games. I understand the need for a leveling system to keep players engaged in the long run, but I also feel as if it actively hurts new players trying the game. New players are an audience you need to grab from the get-go. Payday the Heist has enough going for it to grab you, but it could have used a few tweaks to broaden its appeal. As an alternative to the slog of grinding and feeling underpowered for a while when starting out, I think I'd like to suggest an alternative alongside leveling. Since the game treats finishing the heist as a major accomplishment, finishing the heists themselves should have a bigger reward at the end. At least, if you're finishing them for the first time. Imagine starting out on First World Bank and finally making it, and getting a new gun or a new crew bonus to play with. Upgrades and such would still be tied to leveling, that I don't mind, but actual tools just shouldn't be arbitrarily locked out for a while. Finishing Heat Street and Overkill and receiving the grenade launcher, or finishing Panic Room and getting the M308. It would reward individual performances a lot more than trying to get to push people into effectively finding the most optimal way to get to the max level, such as grinding the overdrill secret. If people want to skip the grind, you serve them up, and there's a chance that your grind simply isn't fun. What do you think is the main problem here? If you thought perk things, get out. Close the door behind you, and don't come back. Think about what drives difficulty. In Payday 2, it's very bluntly high numbers. More enemies, higher HP pools, enemies dealing more damage. I've talked about it before, but it's difficulty done wrong. It leans too heavily into the RPG elements, which in turn takes away from the need for basic mechanical skill. It makes the general gameplay loop just a little bit more boring. More about numbers rather than feel. It actively shifts the gameplay away from being a first-person shooter. While there are some number tweaks in Payday the Heist, they still end up being way less drastic and over the top than Payday 2, and to some degree even Payday 3 now. What I do believe this game absolutely needed was giving specials extra abilities that they would only start using on higher difficulties, as seen in Killing Floor 2, for example. Generally, I feel difficulty should be less about numbers and more about mechanics, because this is what actual difficulty is. Do you know what else makes difficulty? Your tools. Which brings me to my last gripe with the game. The Bronco, the M308, and the grenade launcher are overpowered. Want to know a fun fact? The grenade launcher is DLC. It's also a direct counter to shields. It's the very definition of power creep. It's tied to a DLC. Again, you have to buy it. Yeah, I guess that's one way of enticing people to buy your DLC. It generally makes the game way easier, which you can both see as a positive or a negative, I guess. I can't blame them though, because if the DLC was only the AK and the strike, it probably wouldn't have encouraged many to actually buy it. But let's keep the weapon ramblings for the rankings later. Let's take a leap from shield counter and talk about specials. Specials are special. Guns and greed galore. Unstoppable force meets immovable object. The specials. A point of contention for Payday 3. Also a point of contention for Payday 2. Special enemies are difficult to get right and even more difficult to make fun to fight. Payday the Heist probably does it the best out of all the 3 games though. The taser is deadly. If he catches you off guard, he's going to get you real good. So running away from your team is a bad idea. No teammates nearby means you're fresh meat for a hungry taser who wants to enjoy himself a little bit of police brutality. He has yellow accents, which helps distinguishing him from the surrounding heavies, as his silhouette ends up being somewhat similar to them. He also comes with the fun game of catch the taser, since you're able to shoot back while getting tased, potentially killing or stunning him and freeing yourself without the help of your silly teammates. Risky but doable, and absolutely not something you can rely on. Talking about police brutality, the cloaker? What a bother in Payday 2. What a bother in Payday 3. So what about the first version of the cloaker? Well, he's okay. I think that the fact he's slower than his 2 bigger brothers is made up by the fact that he's way quieter and also a lot more relentless. He doesn't take hostages, and is generally just a lot better done than his 2 counterparts. He pushes people into sticking closer to each other as to prevent people from getting down on the other side of the map and being essentially unrecoverable. Most recognizable for his green eyes and crouched walk, unless he's doing his rare animation of running along the wall on Panic Room. What's next? The wall. And this wall is a tall one. Again, in comparison to its 2 follow-ups, the shield in Payday the Heist is just very basic. So the way the shields move in this game, coupled with the fact that there's only one active anti-shield weapon, they just work. They're threatening without being too frustrating. Not much more to be said there. When it comes to recognizability, you'll hear him. He's audible. He's also very visible. He's a shield. I think he's easy to tell apart, not much more to be said there. Now, what about the dozer? Wow, there's only one type. And he's scary. He's a threat. He's going to destroy the entire team if you don't pay attention. Don't let him. If you play your cards right, he's easy to take down. If you split up, it's a lot more difficult. He is an aggressor done right, and his design is also by far the most interesting. While the EOD suit from Payday 2 is also incredibly recognizable, the astronaut from Payday the Heist is just way cooler. Putting a crack in his dome always sparks a little enjoyment in my COD Zoomer dopamine-deprived brain. Am I missing someone here? Probably not, because the sniper's not as special here. You can't mark them, even though they do get called out by the Heisters and Bane occasionally. And their traces are incredibly obvious, and taking them out is about as important as they would be in Payday 2. I can't say they're done better, but I can definitely say that they became overbearing in the second game. So it's another win for Payday the Heist in terms of enemy design, with the downside of not being able to mark them. So what's up next? That's right, the main characters of this game, next to the playable ones. The Heists themselves. Let's start at the very beginning of time, the inception of mankind. Shortly after fish developed legs, they created capitalism and were forced to work a 9 to 5. This resulted in the creation of banks. Banks hold money in it. Money can be exchanged for goods and services. So what if you were to disguise yourself as a clown and repossess the money that would have taken you years to work up towards? Ho ho ho, delightfully devilish, Dallas. Wait, this is a video game and wasn't supposed to be political commentary, right? Thank God Payday the Heist doesn't have any political commentary in it. Anyway, First World Bank. As the name applies, the bank of the First World. Glitz, glamour, and more wealth than your wage-cuck ass could ever stomach. By the way, this was the heist featured in the demo Payday the Heist. It's also one of 2 heists that feature an easy difficulty. It's very much supposed to be the introduction to your life of crime. As soon as you enter the bank, you're already met by just how big everything is. You're visually met by a figurative explanation of how much money is going to be in the vault of this bank. Your first objective? Find the bank manager, which you can do in casing mode by going either to the left or to the right. The bank manager, face model being Bo Anderson, the former CEO of Overkill and Starbreeze, as well as being the brother of Ulf Anderson, who plays Wolf in Payday the Heist and Payday 2, holds a keycard that's needed to enter the server room, where an inside man has stashed 2 cans of thermite and a drill, which are both needed for the objectives to follow. Through the random spots that the bank manager might pop up in, the heist generally pushes you into exploring the bank. With repeated playthroughs, you'll learn the layout of the main lobby without really realizing it. For example, if you head left of the entrance, you'll enter the gate that will lead you to the vault area. But you also immediately notice the metal detectors, which, if the player is able to put 2 and 2 together, becomes a main area of interest. It's quite well done and allows you to go through a good chunk without secure areas or guards immediately telling you off, which is a bonus. The plan here is to go loud anyways, so there's not much planning going on outside of just scouting the general place. Once you've killed Bo, you're supposed to make a mad dash for the server room to grab the thermite and drill. During this, there's already one smart decision going on. There are a ton of civilians in the main entrance area, which allows for 3 players to control them and take out any roaming guards and cameras while they're at it. By the way, even though Bane will tell you that it reduces police intel, all it does is give you an additional XP bonus. That's it. Once the area has been cleared of guards, the initial waves of first responders will arrive. They're going to push, prod, poke, trying to get to the civilians. All the while, you'll usually be focused on setting up the drill, which ends up being just an intact timer followed by a longer timer that can sometimes jam. This marks the first defense segment, as I'll call it. A very straightforward objective defense, where you're primarily trying to stay alive, while in this case also focusing on the objective at hand, which is to get past the gate and into the vault. Though during this defense segment, Bane will ask you to erase the security footage from the camera network through an access point that he marks out for you and your team. It's another longer intact prompt, which will have you ambushed halfway through. Depending on your team composition, you can do it all by yourself, but maybe having a friend along if you're just starting out is a good idea. Once you're done with it, that's it. Bane does the rest for you and you can go back to defending the drill. Generally speaking, there's a lot of cover in the main areas of First World Bank, but players seem to be drawn to hiding near the metal detectors and the archway leading into the main entrance area. As soon as the drill is done, and given the security footage has been erased, otherwise the gate would open, the players push through to the vault area, where they're met by an additional group of higher security guards, basically waiting for you. Pushing further through, you're met by the vault itself. Bane gives instructions on how to use the thermite, essentially just burning through the roof of the vault and creating a hole to jump through. This is the second defense segment on First World Bank. as it's just another timer to wait out. If you're solo, you can only carry one can of thermite. If you have another player, and he grabbed the second can, the timer gets reduced if he also puts it on top of the whole TV. It's noticeable enough to make a difference, and most importantly reduces time spent doing nothing. That being said, if you're a solo player, you can still grab the second can of thermite. It's just going to require you to push all the way back to the server room. Once the thermite's done, the fun begins. Money grabbing. A greedy team usually storms into the vault and grabs everything as quickly as possible before making a mad push through to the escape. But a smarter approach would be to split up into teams of two. One team defending the vault entrance, while the other team clears out the vault itself. It makes the initial push towards the choke point a lot easier. The way the map is laid out, little to no cops spawn from behind the player, which allows the team on the choke point to make life a lot easier for those clearing out the vault. It's one of those little team play elements that seem to be lacking entirely from the later Payday games. After all this build up, we've reached the climax. Or have we? Taking money is one thing, getting out with it is another. The escape on First World Bank is tough, and usually where it's most important to have your ammo bag or medic bag at the ready. If you're underprepared, underleveled, or are missing a link or two, it's going to become the hardest part. Running out the vault area back to where you came in from, you'll be met with a choice of going left, to the main lobby, or right up to the stairs. If you go up the stairs, there's a 99% chance that the shutters are down. Once you're at the stairs, trying to push towards the metal detectors becomes a little more of a challenge on its own. If you decide to run straight through the lobby, you'll be pestered by snipers, specials, and heavies. Running and gunning isn't much of an option here, unless you're really lucky or just incredibly thick-skinned. A player that's paid good attention when initially scouting the place will remember that behind the main counters, there's a little area behind a wall that provides easy cover from everything coming from the main doors, which makes this push a lot easier, but still not too easy. Going up to the server room, you will now be tasked to plant C4 on the wall next to it to blow it wide open, making an entrance to a nearby office complex, through which you'll have to run through, getting to a flight of stairs that'll lead you all the way down into an underground garage where none of the comms have set up any reinforcements to catch you off guard. Except for the odd special that can bust through a door on your way to the escape vehicle, but that one's just funny, even funnier if it's just a dozer. Anyway, after that's over, congratulations, you've made it. You're now $1 million richer, and you'll never have to work another day. That's the perfect route of First World Bank, how it's supposed to happen, but not always how it will end up. Through the tight-knit gameplay of PAYDAY The Heist, some of the objectives might become less important than just staying alive, or trying to wait out an assault to get one of your teammates out of custody. Every heist with its randomization and all the elements surrounding it make for an unforgettable experience, and this is just the intro to the game.
Okay, I'll take the plates, you erase the security footage.
No, that wasn't the plan. Don't change things up, man.
There, Slick. Now I call the shots.
What the? What are you doing, Matt?
Fooled you guys. Kiss my ass, guys.
Get him! That case is worth a hell of a lot of money.
After First World Bank, Heat Street ends up being a subversion of expectations. Instead of being the build-up to a hit, it perfectly encapsulates the second piece of inspiration from the heisting action movies that this game is based on. Heat Street is a heist gone wrong, whereas it picks up from the end and shows you being betrayed by one of your partners. He locks the door in front of you and escapes in the escape vehicle while you struggle to lockpick the door open and catch up to him. There's a lot of money in that deal, and it's rightfully yours. So go grab it from him, be it alive or dead. Bane arranges a meeting with an alternate escape driver to help you catch up, but first, you'll have to get there. Where First World Bank lets you scout the heisting playground in your own time, Heat Street throws you like a fish into the frying pan. Immediately upon bursting out the door, you're rushing down the street with cops already waiting your arrival. Civilians everywhere, screaming, running for their lives. It feels like a lively part of the city, and you're in the midst of it, connected to everything going on, while you're really only focused on getting the guy that you called partner only a few minutes ago. On the way to your escape driver, he crashes and dies on impact. If you walk up to his crashed vehicle's trunk intact with it, you will be able to open it and might even find some loose cash in there. Just as a little bonus, nothing major. Maybe not worth it if you're just trying to conserve your ammo and resources until the first defense section. I talked about it before, what I mean by defense sections, but you might have noticed that Heat Street doesn't really have any of those early on. That's not entirely true, because as you make a mad dash through the streets, you'll already be taking cover left and right, reloading, do little mini defense sections until it becomes ever more difficult to push on through. At this point, your first minor proper defense happens, either in an alleyway, behind a sign, behind a piece of plywood, or in a construction site near some barricades, behind a SWAT truck. The path is clear, but getting there without dying is less so. It's exhilarating how tense this initial push is, and it just speaks to the atmosphere and vibe that this game brings with it. A solo player will hate this heist because the bots are simply unable to catch up in time, but a coordinated team of 4 will still have its skills tested. It's so incredibly tightly crafted, and we're not even on the first main objective. Once you've finally caught up with your partner, Matt, you'll see his wreckage at a nearby parking lot. You're not getting the briefcase without getting Matt out of the van, but he's not coming out unless you force him to come out. The main man in your ear, Bane, immediately comes up with a plan. Set the van on fire by lighting gas cans around it. This is your first vault bank drill, your first major defense section. The parking lot has clear points of cover and clearly telegraphed spawns, which make it easy for a squad of 4 to work together, effectively clearing out waves of cops without much trouble. Unless one group pushes through, at which point the tight gameplay of Payday the Heist kicks in again, and players are forced to stick closer to each other. Cops are deadly, and a split up group of players with cops in between is a group that's about to get pushed away from each other, and likely overwhelmed by a combination of 2 specials, or just a few deadly heavy swats. Once you've run through a handful of gas cans, Matt gets out of the van. But now what? You can't just cut his hand off, that'd be cruel. So instead, the most logical conclusion is to push him to a different street that a helicopter can easily reach to pick you up from. Ah yes, of course, the most logical thing to do. Pushing Matt in his injured state now becomes the main focus here. He refuses to move when surrounded by cops but can't die, and becomes an easy focus point for players to congregate around. It's cheap and easy but incredibly effective mission design that encourages team play through one simple shared objective. The push towards the helicopter escape is an extremely tough one and will have moments like in the end of the first vault bank, where players might have to defend a position for a little while longer and consider stocking up on resources, or even waiting out entire assaults to get their teammates back out of custody before making the final push towards the actual escape zone. Once in the escape zone, the fun isn't over yet, as it pushes one last objective on you, clearing the landing zone for the helicopter. With careful planning and everyone carrying their weight, this one becomes relatively easy. But if one link fails, you get pushed away, which in turn causes a failsafe to kick in, and you have to push Matt back down the street. This makes for high stakes and incredibly tense moments all throughout the last bits of this heist, which is why it's a fan favorite of many people, even on the higher difficulties. One thing that should also be noted on the topic of Heat Street is that, in this game specifically, the spawns are deliberately never coming from behind the player, but always focused in front, unless you scatter too much, in which case the game might get a little confused. Its deliberate spawns make this one of the most enjoyable heists in the game.
Alright, let's slip into our roles in this little drug deal charade. Those junkies won't know it hit them until it's too late.
That panic room they got in there is gonna be full of cash, and we're gonna take it all.
A drug deal gone wrong, but this time the other way around.
Go inside.
Panic Room comes right after Heat Street, but ends up losing the pace a bit in comparison. Once your fake money cover is blown, you are tasked to find the main man Chavez, unrelated to Ding Chavez, who holds the key to the Panic Room in which a big, heavily armored vault is located. The vault is so heavily armored that you won't be able to saw or blow it open on the spot, which is why you'll have to steal it, as in the entire thing itself. Your goal is to blow the surrounding walls off the hinges before blowing a hole into the roof of the building and then airlifting the whole vault out of there. Panic Room is a lot quicker to get to the point of, as it's a lot more contained in comparison to the other heists. The action takes place in one big building with multiple stories and a roof that's under constant sniper supervision. Taking care of those snipers is one thing that players should strive to do all throughout the heist, as it's a big factor of how easy or hard it's going to be. Randomization sometimes locks off the main stairwell leading onto the roof, which is just about the single most important choke point in the entire heist. Once the main objectives are set into motion, the entire building is under constant siege, under lockdown. and it's definitely felt. Through the somewhat awkward video gamey architecture of the building, there's still a lot of cover though, which is why pulling out and pushing back into cover is never an impossibility, even if it is going to cost you a lot of resources to actually get there. Once you've cleared the roof of snipers, detached the bolt from the building, and attached it to the magnet strapped to the helicopter, it's a dash down to street level and into a little room located under the building, which will lead you into the sewer escape zone. Panic Room has some of the elements from the previous heists, but through its contained nature it ends up being a little weaker as a follow-up, while still maintaining the over-the-top action movie nature of everything going on, accentuated by this banger of a soundtrack. Imagine the prisoner transport from GTA 3. There's a prisoner in one of several trucks being transported to a different correctional facility, currently driving over a bridge, which has been rigged. Rigged to blow.
Okay, stay low, everybody. I'm detonating. 4, 3, 2, cover, ignition.
Well, that ought to stop the prison transport, right? Let's get moving.
All right, transports and all traffic stopped. The scene is yours.
The Green Bridge is set to explode to get your hands on one extremely important Chinese businessman. But the mission isn't over yet. This is where the heist starts. It's time to actually find out which trunk the prisoner is in. This means a bridge full of cars that provide cover and a handful of saws attached to a handful of trucks scattered across the bridge that's now become a prime target for the entire US police force. What a spectacle, seriously. After the initial major defense segment is over, it's time to push the prisoner to a nearby construction site where preparations have been made to extract him from the scene. A jet seat with an emergency balloon tied to it so that George can pick him up by performing a flyby catch using a seaplane. This is your second, this time minor, defense segment, with one small push in between. On top of a construction site tower, with cops trying to get their hands on the prisoner, while another wave of cops tries to push up from down the stairs. Once George manages to catch the prisoner, which can fail in the first go-around, it's a push to the finish. Along the part of the bridge that's still intact, alongside several scattered, evacuated cars, trucks, transporters, and buses, to a little flight of stairs where scuba gear's waiting on the team, implying an escape through the sea underneath. Another daring and over-the-top action movie style escape. Stronger than Panic Room from a visual standpoint, but a little weaker through its open-air nature. The second defense segment here is quite weak, and the highlight is definitely the final push, which is probably where most attempts will fail, especially on higher difficulties. If you've paid attention, you'll notice that I had much less to say about Greenbridge and Panic Room than I did for First World Bank and Heat Street. It's a given that people have preferences, and that some might prefer some heists over others. To me, personally, I think that First World Bank and Heat Street are two amazing experiences that come right after another, and build up a certain expectation that the heists that follow end up being just as good, if not better. But they simply aren't. Which is absolutely not to say they're bad. If you compare the weakest heist in this game to the strongest one in Payday 3, it's night and day. Not just from a presentation standpoint or from a soundtrack standpoint, most importantly, from a gameplay perspective. Gameplay isn't just an armor system. Gameplay isn't just more variety. Gameplay is a culmination of everything that you see on the screen that you experience, coming together and working like a machine with many little cogwheels and belts. If one piece fails, the machine might not stop. It might even continue running, but when every part has flaws in some way, the machine will slowly but surely fall apart. The bigger the machine, the more likely it is to break. Payday the Heist is a small machine, with less moving parts and a lot of grease and duct tape to keep it from falling apart. And it runs. It works. It plays well. It's easy to pick up. It's quick to get into. Which is why, even though I personally don't like Panic Room or Greenbridge as much, I don't think they're bad. They have less going for them, and in turn end up being a little bit weaker than what came before, but they still manage to stand on their own, with their own little identity setting them apart, with a banger soundtrack, with well thought out layouts, without being overwhelming. Which is just still... What the f? And most importantly, by just being fun. It doesn't waste your time, and even if you don't particularly enjoy the game, you have to admit that it's still an incredibly tight and enticing package. So, going from a high to a figurative low, what's to follow? Was this game not all I've made it out to be? Is this where the cracks start to show in the mission design? Absolutely not. Where First World Bank set a standard, which Heat Street pushed to its limits, and Greenbridge as well as Panic Room didn't really elaborate upon, the next Heist takes it to an entirely different level. Almost quite literally.
Alright, entry point. Synchronize on my mark. Mark. Check. Remember, stay low, stay dark, avoid guards and gunfire. Here we go.
You got the ordnance. Go.
Shut down. They're blind.
Immediately upon loading into the heist, the scene is made very clear.
Right. Find them and get me hooked up with the gadgets we acquired.
Diamond Heist puts you onto the 22nd floor of Garnet Group's skyscraper. Looking out the window that you came through, you see something that you'd think is a skybox, but isn't. These buildings are real. Kind of. This heist absolutely pushed the PS3 to its limits, but boy am I glad that I'm playing this on a modern PC in 2025, where it can easily get 130 frames without any stutters, drops, upscaling, or anything alike. Despite its age, I think the view still looks great. I mean, come on. It already sets the mood perfectly. While a lot of the other heists either set up a scene and put you in the midst of it, Diamond Heist works a little differently. It builds off of First World Bank's casing, allowing you to finally use semi-proper stealth, even if it is incredibly bare bones. There's a party going on, blasting music in the distance.
Get down on the ground. We're compromised. Get down.
While the soundtrack of the heist is more on the down low, really accentuating the footsteps of roaming guards. Occasionally, you'll hear the DJ at the party saying some things, adding to the flair and making it seem a little more lively than it really is. Through flashlight cones, cameras that are more or less there just to scare you, and the desire to kill, you'll be forced to stumble through the several floors of this heist to plant 3 tablets that can spawn in several different locations, in order to disable the lasers in front of the big vault that you're hitting. This is where the supposed 20 million in diamonds is stored. Once that's done and you get down to the vault to punch the code into the keypad, there's about a 90% chance that the doors remain closed, as the codes that Bane has acquired through totally legitimate means ended up being outdated or just entirely wrong. In case you fuck up before that and get caught.
Let's get that vault open.
You got the codes already. Now you have access to the vault's control panel. Whoa, what's just happened?
You'll have to hack the remaining tablets, which are treated like any other wait timer, which is why stealth on here is entirely optional, but definitely the preferred approach, as it saves a lot of time. The vibe of being sneaky and stealing some diamonds before getting caught by guards who will shoot you on sight is incredibly well done here. The moment of tension followed up by a quick remark at the fact that we've been spotted, and now the stealth playground just turned into a shooting gallery. Stealth is for suckers anyway. Now it's your time to get to business, and just about 2 minutes too late to come up with an effective plan B. Bane, your trusty assistant on the air, is already looking for an alternative though. While there's constant chatter between the Heisters and Bane, making sure to relay as much info and suggestions as possible to each other, the guards will be hunting you down as the initial wave of cops. They're just a teaser of what's to come. Once again, this intro, both if you manage to stealth it, but especially if you fuck up, is just so exceptionally well done. I have to mention it again. You're initially going to be dealing with mostly first responders while the assault wave slowly builds up. All the while the soundtrack is perfectly accompanying the action on screen and off screen. Having had the opportunity to roam the place in stealth, the player should now have a basic idea of what the place looks like, how to get to the roof, how to get down to the vault. If not, there's still plenty of waypoints to show you where the mission objectives are, so don't worry too much about not knowing where to go. Bane has an idea, the CFO, Garnet, owner of the company. Fun fact, he's portrayed by Ilya Petrusic himself, who was one of the key developers of Payday and later Raid World War II. He was at the party, so it's time to find him and have him attend a meeting with Bane himself to talk him into giving us the codes for the vault. Pushing him up to the helipad on the roof is the same escort sequence as pushing Matt up on Heat Street or the Chinese prisoner on Greenbridge. Once there, players can go to their first proper defense section on this heist, since you're mostly still scouting the place at the start. Sticking to the roof is usually a bad idea, but can absolutely be done. It's down to preference where you want to hold out. This is where the second RNG situation comes in. The CFO might keep his mouth shut, in which case you'll see him getting kicked out of the helicopter and splatting down into the main vault entrance area like a fly against a race car's windshield. Poor Ilya. But it's not quite over yet. There's a chance that his son, Ralph, was at the party. When you escort the CFO to the helipad, he might even mention him being around and that you should take him instead. So why don't we just go and do that now? Bane takes a little while to find Ralph. He's somewhere, but he's hidden. Once he's found, same thing as before. Escort him to the helipad, have him interrogated. He doesn't want to ruin his suit, so he'll happily spill the codes. There's a chance that an extra vault might pop up. Another RNG element, one that'll earn you even more money. From where you spawned, there's a window cutter on the floor, which you can now go back to pick it up and cut the glass in the new super secret room that's hiding a supposed blood diamond. But if the window gets shot during the cutting process, which ends up being just another wait timer, the shutters close and you will never get the diamond inside. Once you're done cleaning the place, and in case you actually manage to get the big one, it's time to escape. There are several different escape zones on this heist, but the helicopter will wait on you, but only for a short amount of time. If you take too long, they'll have to reposition and pick you up somewhere else. Which is why it's usually recommended to book it as soon as you can and get to the helicopter before it leaves. But there's also an achievement for making him reposition a bunch of times before he ends up picking up from the only outside area featured in the heist. The climax of finally making it out, while under constant threat of gunfire, bombarded by smoke grenades and specials, is one of a kind. Diamond Heist is what the previous two heists didn't manage to achieve, a natural progression of what First World Bank and Heat Street set as a foundation. You notice that the developers had a lot of fun setting this one up, and it very obviously inspired a lot of the elements that will come later in the sequel. Especially the RNG, as well as the ability to stealth just about every heist. The movie influences on this heist are absolutely felt, Mission Impossible type shit, and definitely played into, which makes for an incredibly fun and cinematic experience. But then, how could you possibly follow something up like this? Well, this is where it takes us to the Slaughterhouse.
And also on the 45 going south, there's been a major accident that's clogging the entire freeway. It's like a war zone.
Looks like the diversion worked. They've changed their course. Convoy should be here in a minute.
Let's get to work.
Slaughterhouse opens up with a view of a convoy transporting gold to a local reserve. And this is where you come in, to ambush the convoy. On a little self-built bridge, you get a full frontal view of the convoy, which you can use to shoot at the windows of the escorting SUVs, which makes them accelerate and flip. Doing so allows you to run past all the flipped vehicles without heavy swans immediately open firing upon you. It's an exchange of resources, and an easier first push into the next section of the heist. The truck that was carrying the gold gets picked up by me, Lynn. A crane picks up the truck and chucks it into the roof of a nearby slaughterhouse. The roof isn't sturdy enough to hold it, so it falls on through, into the slaughterhouse. This is where you come in. Run down the flight of stairs and head straight into the slaughterhouse. Can you tell why this heist is called Slaughterhouse yet? Upon finding the trunk, you'll be forced to blow the back wide open to get the safe inside that's holding all the gold. This is your first major defense segment here, and probably the most fun one that this heist has to offer. You'll have a couple of minutes to prepare, to take hostages, before you're defending a drill with several solid points of cover around. This area is relatively well designed, but as soon as the drill is done, issues start popping up. The container yard is one of the weaker elements that this heist has to offer. As soon as you enter it, your next objective pops up, depositing the gold inside of a container that has been prepared for not so easy extraction. Put the gold down, admire the fact that it's glowing for whatever reason, and you'll be forced to head back inside the slaughterhouse itself to get a can of gasoline. Once you pick said gas can up, you'll be forced to push back outside, so that you can set up the diversion that is used to keep the cops off of getting the gold back. The container yard is the complete opposite of the slaughterhouse itself, whereas there are way less points of cover, with tons of spawns that can happen right above you. If the weakest link of your group gives in here, it's incredibly easy to get cornered, in which case, it'll become all the more difficult to fight your way back and get control of the entire situation. Moving the containers takes a lot of time and ends up being one big interconnected defense segment. But once it's done, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, let's go. Push on through to the other side, and into the designated escape zone. While Slaughterhouse starts out strong, it once again manages to fall a bit flat in comparison to Diamond Heist, which is an absolute shame. It's not a bad heist by any means, but definitely one of my least favorites. Counterfeit is interesting.
Once you've supposedly fixed, they're leaking again.
Sorry to hear that, sir. We'll send our guys over right away.
Yeah, you hurry.
They brought it. Let's drain the place.
Suit up, load them, get to work.
It once again tries to implement a sort of pseudo-stealth like Diamond Heist did, but this time in an entirely different setting. In a rich white neighborhood, there's a guy called Mitchell who has some leaking pipes in a super secure basement. This is where you come in, and disguise yourselves as pool repairmen, because sure. Arriving at the scene, you can talk to the man himself. He will take you inside and open the door to the basement for you. If you go loud early and scare him, you'll have to open the door yourself using a crowbar. The crowbar ends up being a big gimmick of this heist, by the way. If you do decide to stealth the first section, you'll be able to plant the first tablet to open the door into the little area where the safe is held. But Mitchell has a partner in crime, living next door, who also has a door leading into the same super secret basement. The two houses are connected, so you're forced to hop over the fence and find the hidden entrance to the room, so that you can attach a hacking tablet to that door as well. During the stealth on this, a buddy cop duo will come to check out the house. You can take them down with silenced guns, which will delay the point at which the heist will go loud a little further. After these cops didn't respond back to HQ though, the police will start calling both houses for a wellness check. This is about the point at which the tablets should be more than halfway done. And this is also just about the point at which police will start building up their forces. Because soon, it's going to be showtime. The music makes it very clear when your temporary cover has been blown, and the build-up is absolutely phenomenal. Doing this heist full stealth is an impossibility unless you use exploits, and I'm more than fine with it. I think that it further plays into the action movie influences that this game wears on its sleeves, where oftentimes things don't go as planned, and the stars of the show will end up making it out on top somehow. Once the doors are done, you'll be met with a gate. Using your crowbar on it opens the gates, and you're finally met with the safe itself. But drilling is not an option. Wolf calls out that it's a Franz Jaeger safe, too thick to saw or simply drill open. So we have to resort to alternative means. Instead of drilling through the keyhole and opening it that way, you instead drill through the top with a special little drill bit. This means your first defense segment begins. Not only the drill itself this time, but also the power boxes that it's pulling from. You actually even have to plug the drill into a nearby outlet, which is kinda cute. A long and grueling defense section spanning two houses interconnected through one big room. A neat concept, and definitely unique. Once the drill's done, the safe is still not quite open. Instead, it's time to fill the safe with water. This means you'll have to pull a hose connected to a water pump from outside, all the way down to the basement before connecting it to the safe itself. Another defense segment begins. This time, you're defending the water pumps that you're pulling all the water from. This is way easier said than done. But once that is done, how do we open this thing? A hole, some water inside the safe, but what now? That's right. Exploding C4 inside the safe to use the expanding forces from inside the water and forcefully rip the handles off of this thing, opening it wide up and exposing all the diamonds and counterfeit money printing plates. As soon as the C4 is blown and all the loot has been picked up, it's a mad dash for the nearby sewer system through a manhole located near one of the sheds outside. Rushing through the sewers with cops occasionally popping out from some of the holes is hilarious and seems kinda silly, as when you get to the escape zone, there's quite literally no one waiting on you. neither an escape vehicle nor any sort of police response. While Counterfeit was pretty neat, it didn't really do much more than combining some of the previous objective types with a new coat of paint. As one of 2 heists featured in the Wolfpack DLC, it does its job quite well. But then, what about the second one? Undercover already starts out incredibly tense. You find yourself in an abandoned multi-story building with planks lying around everywhere and a ton of windows facing the street outside where a deal is being held between the so-called taxman and some shady businessmen. Your main man on the ear, Bane, as usual manages to give you a direct wire into the conversation. While the deal is going on, you're tasked with quickly scouting the place. If you paid attention just a minute ago, you'll be able to put planks and windows together. This heist's big gimmick is being able to board up windows and chain link fences on the roof, as well as air vents to block certain cloaker spots, even though that one's kind of a waste of time. If you pay attention to the area outside, you will immediately come to the conclusion that snipers on this heist are a dominating force, and they will absolutely ruin your day, especially the closer you get to the escape, which is why boarding up as much as you can to provide extra cover is incredibly important. Especially for the areas that you'll be spending most of your time in, such as in the room that you spawn in, the room in which future interrogations will happen. The deal advances and Bane comments on the taxman putting the server, which is our main target, into his pocket. This is the point at which you're supposed to scare him back into his limousine, so that a nearby crane with a magnet attached to it can pick him up and deliver him onto the roof of the building that you're currently in. But it turns out the deal was a bust. The FBI was acting undercover. There's a double meaning here, by the way, up for the heist's name, and it's very much on purpose. Boarding up the windows to provide extra cover to be under, and the FBI being undercover doing a deal. It's so dumb, but also kind of funny. Anyway, RNG will kick in. The limo might drop early and land on the balcony on the 3rd floor. It might also land on the roof and stay there. It might also then crack through the ceiling and fall down a flight of stairs. It might also fall down even further, almost to ground level. If you get the roof spawn, good luck defending it, because you'll be sawing into the limo. It's your first defense segment, and you'll be doing so under constant pressure. This heist wants you dead, and it's incredibly easy to get cornered here. The soundtrack absolutely accentuates the experience. Undercover is oppressive, it pushes you and your team to its absolute limits, and it's a blast. All the little random elements coming together make for such an incredibly tense, fun, and replayable heist. Again, making it one of the community's fan favorites. Anyway, once the limo is open, the taxman played by Almir Listo himself will pop out. He is unwilling to talk, but will follow your directions anyway. Don't forget to pick up the server from the limo before you go, it's what you came here for anyway. To get into what's on the server, you need passwords, and the taxman has the passwords on hand, but he needs to be convinced to give them to you. So you strap him to a chair in a little room that was prepared before the heist started. You can scream at him, but he is resistant to words. You're able to hit him as well, to loosen up his attitude, so to speak. But if you're not careful enough, you'll end up knocking him out. If he's knocked out, no codes for you until he wakes back up. It's hilarious. Screaming at the taxman as a solo player takes a while, but having the entire squad scream at him is not only pure cinema, but also incredibly effective. Once it gives you the first password to get past the encryption, it's time for a defense segment. Another drill, but this time, virtual. Again, circuit breakers need to be defended, like with the drill and Counterfeit. One of them is on the roof. If you're unlucky or didn't prepare very well, the roof circuit breaker will have you annihilated. This heist is a true test of teams, and I absolutely adore it for that. The password guessing continues 2 more times, with the wave of cops getting more and more relentless and your resources being very noticeably drained the longer you go on. When I said this heist actively wants you dead, I mean it. Once he gives in and gives you all of the passwords, it's money time. It's yours, but you still need to escape. The escape on Undercover takes you up to the roof and over the rooftops, over a gap that you need to jump, and finally into the escape zone. Bane might even make a bad Prince of Persia joke here. Not like any of the other jokes he's done so far have been any better. Another climax, and another heist down on the books. It's finally time to settle down. You've done it all. You're set for life. Or are you? What if I told you that there was one more hint that you've been offered by someone who doesn't want to be named? And it's a hit on a hospital. To get a blood sample out of a patient who's currently in the intensive care unit. What is it with that blood sample? Why does this unnamed someone want it? We don't ask questions. We were offered money, and money does the talking. No Mercy is a PC exclusive heist that takes place in the Mercy Hospital, which is a location featured in Left 4 Dead 1, and also Left 4 Dead 2 through the entirety of the first game being featured in the second game. Essentially, No Mercy in PAYDAY The Heist builds up this non-canon theory of the heisters kickstarting the green flu outbreak by forcefully breaking the containment unit of the infected patient and spreading it onto the cops and rescue units to come. It's an incredibly silly but fun concept, and comes with equally as silly mission design. The heist starts you out in the elevator, with a random possibility of a surprise Bill cameo. He interrupts Bane explaining the mission details to you, which is an incredibly cute detail. Once inside the ward, you are once again put into a position to attempt and do the first part quietly. Objective number 1. Control the civilians and take out the cameras before the 7-second timer is over. If you're the host, you're required to use a silenced gun here. If you're not the host, you can use any gun you want. Once the cameras are down, controlling the civilians and preventing them from hitting the panic buttons becomes the main priority. They are twitchy, they will run past you if they have to. The more players, the more civilians there are. Lucky for you, there's no guards to take out here. Killing any other civilians will set off an alarm signal as well, as every civilian apparently has a heartbeat sensor installed, or so Bane claims. After a while, Bane will ask you to look for the patient's records, to check if the correct patient is held here. This requires a little bit of teamwork, as there's a lot of files lying around and only one of them is correct. All the while, civilians still need to be kept in check, and sometimes a guard will come up the stairs to check up on the cameras. That guard needs to be taken out. Once again, if you're not the host, then you can use any gun that you want. Once both things have been taken care of, it's time to put decoy sentries in place, so that the civilians stop moving in fear of getting shot. This finally stops the civilian control game and takes us to the next section. Playing Doctor. You exchange your suits for doctor scrubs and sneak into the ICU, where a nice lady with a thick Swedish accent working at an American hospital will tell you the stories and information of 3 patients. One of them, she will explicitly say, will be held for further experiments as he's unlikely to recover from his symptoms anytime soon, as well as having abnormally high heartbeat rates and blood pressure. This is the patient that you need to get to. Fun thing about the nurse explaining the symptoms is the fact that the lines aren't synced between players, so everyone might hear something else entirely. Anyway, only one of the 3 patients is the correct one. There are colored wires going from every patient's containment unit to an electrical box, which, if cut, will trigger the alarm but disable the shutters for that specific containment unit. If you cut the wrong wire, you'll have to go back to the main lobby and saw your way into the right patient's unit. If you go loud from the start by missing some of the cameras or having the civilians push the panic button, then you'll even have to saw your way into the ICU area itself, which might take just about as much time as doing the stealthy approach really. Aside from the fact that you get to open one of the units instantly if you do the first part stealthily. Once you get your hands on the right patient, you can draw blood from him, which you'll have to scan in little machines scattered all around the ward. Getting the right sample will make an audible confirm beeping sound, while getting a bad one will have the vial explode and require the machine to clean itself before you put the next sample to be tested in. You might think that by skipping the saw defense sections, this heist becomes a lot easier. You're not entirely right, but you're also not entirely wrong. No Mercy is an absolute mess of a meat grinder. Police spawns are everywhere, they move in groups, and sometimes drop from the ceiling. They actively smoke you out, making it impossible for you to see anything. Any room that provides cover is a room that will be smoked or pushed into, essentially trying to flush you out. Team play is incredibly important here, as being split up is a guaranteed death sentence. Lucky for you, reviving through walls is possible in this game. If there was ever a heist to revive someone through a wall, it'd be this one. Trust me, you will have to do it eventually. Under constant pressure with the odd assault break in between, you'll finally get your first valid blood sample. This is when Bane allows you to call the elevator. The elevator takes its sweet time though, so you will ultimately have to survive another wave or two. And this time, the cops get even more relentless. They'll spawn more shields, dozers, they'll shut off your power, stopping the elevator from moving and putting you into complete darkness. Whatever it is with that patient, the cops don't want to get this out to the public. If you go down holding a valid sample, there's a chance that it might break. Once the elevator finally arrives on the floor that you're on, you're supposed to have 2 valid samples at the ready. If you don't, then that means more scanning, but the elevator doesn't leave, so there's no unfair push towards an objective here. You can technically take your time and wait out assaults, but that takes a lot of time, and will possibly drain you dry of your resources by the end of it. Anyway, once the samples are in, and everyone but the cops are inside the elevator itself, it's time to leave this place. As you collect yourselves in the safety of your steel casket, Bane remarks that the military is shooting rockets at the building. You really feel like you've just done something that you probably shouldn't have. And if you caught a glimpse of the patient as you continuously drew blood from him, you'll be able to easily get an understanding of just how severe of a mistake you've probably just made. But money made is money made, so it probably doesn't concern you anymore, does it now? RNG kicks in one last time. There's a chance that the elevator will take you to the roof, and take you to a helicopter escape. Or the elevator might jam and send you into a complete freefall before dropping you out on the bottom floor, with flames bursting through the elevator's doors. But lucky for you, there's a crowbar nearby, with which you can open an escape hatch that takes you through the hospital's morgue. Running through the morgue, heading straight to the escape, you notice a lot of dead bodies. And you just can't seem to shake that these bodies might not stay dead for much longer. It can't be understated what kind of finale No Mercy could have been to the Payday series as a whole, effectively tying it into Left 4 Dead and asking you the question, what would Dallas do during the zombie outbreak? Actually, Overkill's The Walking Dead wanted to answer that, but the game didn't even get past its first year. If you want to hear more about Overkill's The Walking Dead, I made a video revisiting my old review on it, as well as talking about my experience with it in 2025, including me talking about the leaked Season 2. That video absolutely had its reach murdered, after one of the songs I used in it got the video claimed. I don't mind making any money off of videos, I'm too small to really earn anything anyway, but the video getting 0 views afterwards kinda fucking sucked. Anyway, all in all, with some of the heists sticking out as being amazing and others being just alright, I would still say that this is a very consistent crime rollercoaster that wears all of its inspirations proudly on its sleeve. Payday the Heist is just a fun game with some fun heists, but as I promised earlier in the video, let's do a very basic ranking, just for the love of the game. In number 9, and I'll rip the band-aid off clean, Panic Room is pretty weak. It's got a banging soundtrack, it's got a pretty focused vision, but it doesn't really go above and beyond. In comparison to the other heists, it's okay. Not bad, not good, just okay. I don't know how much you could improve on it, maybe with a better escape sequence, but it is what it is. And number 8, No Mercy. It's just such a slaughterhouse. Haha. While the general aesthetic and idea of this heist is pretty neat, it ends up falling flat due to just being a couple of corridors. It's a meat grinder. In number 7, Slaughterhouse. Slaughterhouse is really just the best of the worst, where I like everything leading up to the container yard section. The initial push and defense in the Slaughterhouse itself is great, but everything else after just suffers. It is also completely unbearable on Overkill 145+. In number 6, Greenbridge. This is where it gets a little more difficult. The 3 middlemen, starting with Greenbridge. As much as I love the scenery and the flair and the build-up, and as much as I love the final push, a lot of it is empty. I love that it's raining, I love pushing the middleman up to the rendezvous point, but man, it's just lacking a little extra cover and a little more towards the end. In number 5, Counterfeit. Pseudo-stealth on this is awesome, but it only goes halfway. That's why I feel like putting it smack dab in the middle is justified. It's a fun heist, it was important to the ARG, but it's not my favorite. It looks pretty though, it's a nice neighborhood and all. And number 4. First World Bank. The demo heist, the big hit that started it all. And it's great, it's such a complete package with highs, lows, with fluff in and around. Man, this one's awesome. In comparison to its now 2 remakes, I still think it holds up the best. It's a big reference to Heat. The music is quite literally just one segment from the bank heist scene from the movie Heat. What else can I add to this? It's one big cinematic experience, but as a video game. In number 3. Heat Street. To connect into the Heat reference, Heat is just the street shootout scene from Heat. And my god, it's just incredibly fun too. An adrenaline rush start to finish. Every defense section has the players physically relying on each other. It's just so much fun to get right. The higher the difficulty, the higher the stakes. It's perfect almost. In number 2. Undercover. What can I say? It's iconic. Undercover is amazing. The music is perfectly oppressive. It makes for such a unique experience in comparison to the other heists. An overwhelming one. A fun one. It's a heist with no match. Maybe less appealing visually, but with everything else going for it, despite being close to No Mercy in terms of being a meat grinder, it's a fun one, with ways of escaping any given situation if you play it correctly. So then, my number 1, Diamond Heist. It's undefeated, it's underrated, it's unmatched. The flair, the replayability, the pinnacle of heist movie turned video game. It's so quotable. If you don't agree with me here and your alternative isn't Heat Street or Undercover, there's something wrong with you. Genuinely, unironically, my opinion is the only one that holds weight. Nah, I'm just kidding. These are all my personal opinion anyway. And if you want to give your own ranking of your favorite heists, then do so in the comments. I am genuinely curious what your favorite heist is. And while I'm doing a ranking, why not go from heists to characters? Characters are incredibly difficult to get right, especially when you have a bunch of them. But as I said previously, sometimes having less is more. Which is why I think the 4 heisters in Payday the Heist stick out as being better performances overall when compared to the 2 games that followed. With less budget, way more amateurish, and somehow a lot more professional at the same time. I will keep this short and blunt. I'm going to rank my least favorite heister to my most favorite heister, with a little insight to explain my reasoning. Here we go. My least favorite heister, in number 4, Dallas. Dallas is the big funny that everyone quotes and remembers. He says the funny medic bag line, he goes, "Ah!" He's played by Simon Kerr, who has a vocal range of himself and not much more. As a voice actor, he's just quite frankly not very good. He does a solid performance given the context of the game, but once you extend it beyond that, it drowns. He also plays the bulldozer, by the way. In comparison to other characters, he's the weakest link.
Hit him!
Which still doesn't mean he's bad by any means, but he's the last character that I'd want to be playing. That is why he's my least favorite.
Thanks, buddy.
In number 3, Chains.
Hey, man.
Yes, Howard Thompson, known for Comedy Central interlude reads and radio advertisements. And apparently being a chain smoker in this game. Maybe that's why he's called Chains.
Straight ahead.
He's the community punching bag, replaced by the ever more charismatic and involved Damien Poitier in Payday 2. But, and it's another big but, he does a solid performance in Payday the Heist. When he screams, he sounds like he's out of breath, and during the quiet parts, he fits the role of the calm and collected piece of the quartet. I like his performance a little more than Dallas. Not by much. But I definitely think he's overhated. I wish he'd return in some form in the later games, outside of still doing the gangsters in Payday 2's Panic Room. But that's probably never going to happen. In number 2... Hoxton. The token Britoid of the group, Pete Gold does a solid performance given the circumstances at the time. Supposed scheduling conflicts paired with a scrapped create new heister mechanic in Payday 2 ended up with him being sidelined for Derek Ray, who ended up being Hawks in Payday 2 until the Hoxton Breakout Saga, where he turned into Houston. Did you know that a lot of his lines in Payday 2 are re-recorded, and that they generally sound worse? In Payday the Heist, he was written as a British character, with his stereotypical little quirks, but still fitting into the group nonetheless. His Payday 2 lines up to the Britishness, basically turning him into a caricature of an Englishman. I can't stand that performance, even though it's more professional. Maybe I just like how innocent and concise Pete Gold's performance is in this game. He just seems like a more solid character overall. Not my favorite, but by miles better than his future performances. That leaves me with one more character, and probably the obvious choice for many people. And number 1, my most favorite character, is Wolf. Despite not being a voice actor, he puts most life into his acting. He's screaming, he's losing it, he's at the end of his wits, coming up with quips, trying to make sense of the situation. Reacts like any person would in such a situation. He's incredibly charismatic as a character and well written. Most importantly, he knows when to be comic relief.
Now what? Don't tell me we gotta get another guy from that party.
Sometimes with a tinge of actual dark humor that isn't just racism. Wolf is a standout for many, myself included. I love him, and I still can't accept his replacement in Payday 3. I would have been fine with reusing his Payday the Heist lines for another game, but I know that's not how the industry works, and that a lot more people would have just called the developers creatively bankrupt. I just don't think that the character of Wolf in Payday the Heist is remotely similar to the character of Wolf in Payday 3. And that's upsetting. So, what about this list? Do you find it agreeable? Who's your favorite? Who's your least favorite? Let me know down in the comments. So then, I've talked about pretty much all the content this game has to offer. I've touched upon its flaws, I once again got to talk about how much fun I've been having with it, and how incredibly unique it is. What's for the future then? One of the segments that split off of Overkill and Starbreeze founded 10 Chambers back in 2015, with their first big project having been GTFO. GTFO was alienating, but still had some of the more hardcore elements of Payday the Heist in it, with a huge focus on team play. The team admitted that they might have made a very niche game, which is why for their next game, titled Den of Wolves, they want to take a step back from that. Instead, they're making a traditional heisting game, set in the future, with gadgets and the usual 4-player co-op shootouts that you've come to know. From the little footage that we've seen, it does seem a lot more grounded and less horde shootery, which is why I would say that it's probably going to be the closest to a Payday the Heist sequel than you will ever get in your entire life. So if you're interested in that, or just burnt out on Payday 2, keep your eyes open for that one. This video has been an incredibly big passion project to me, and I think that I've just about done the best that I can. I would once again like to thank all of my friends who have helped me out, but especially my best friend, who helped me out with some of my key points. I will probably take a little break until I start working on my next video, and it absolutely will not be related to Payday at all, but it's also not going to take another 3 months, I promise. Thank you again so much for watching what I've created all the way until the end, if you did, and most importantly, I hope that you're taking care of yourself. Bye bye.